Navy SEALs have Hell Week. This was 4 of those back to back. Grown men crying because of the sheer pain.
On this episode of the Matthew Byrd Podcast.
What were some of those things for you that helped you not quit, not give up? What were some of the tactics?
The U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret.
Combat veteran and managing partner.
Head of business operations
and strategy at the cybersecurity company.
The silent sector.
Zach Fuller.
My dad was drafted into Vietnam and had a horrific experience. He would talk about these special operations guys that he met, like they just walked on water, like these mythical creatures, you know? So then I would watch stuff like Rambo or MacGyver, which is based off of a Green Beret Special Forces engineer. I was like, wow, these are larger than life characters. They could do anything. Now we're playing with the big dogs.
A players like working with A players. They work well together. They thrive off each other.
Cyber criminals, the thing we have to realize is that this is a business for them. Deep, dark business, crime rings all over the world, nation-state threat actors that fuel this. I wouldn't wish war on anybody, but allowed me to see the extremes of both good and evil.
A simple thing to do is slow down and zoom out and look at your life from a bigger lens.
We're all way more fragile than we think, and life is incredibly precious, and we need to cherish it.
Hey guys, before we listen to the full episode, we wanted to ask, if you're liking this content, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? It really helps me and our team grow this podcast and bring in more awesome guests to the channel. Thank you, and back to the episode. All right, welcome to the studio, Zach. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
You have an interesting background, which I only know parts of, which is what I love about doing podcasts, is like really getting to learn more. But you've got, experience that spans from military to now working in cybersecurity. Fill that in a little bit for us of what you do now, just in short, and then we're going to go back and talk actually about history and background a bit.
Yeah. So today, my firm, our mission is to protect the backbone of the American economy and our way of life. And to me, that is mid-market and emerging companies, right? These are the companies that are the supply chain for Fortune 500s, for the federal government. Our economy doesn't exist without these companies, right? So, and we do that through cybersecurity and cyber risk management programs. So we've got a team, just a phenomenal world-class team scattered all over the country of individuals that help these organizations build formal security programs. So just like you'd have an accounting program and a marketing program, and you've got processes and procedures and standards that you follow, same is true now with cybersecurity, right? So it's like cybersecurity, I call it the technology tax, because it's been relative to what technology has brought to businesses, it's essentially been free. I mean, and what we're learning and what we've learned over the past number of years as cyber attacks continue to ramp up is that there's actually it's more costly than we realize, right?
Yeah.
We enjoy all the benefits of technology, of that connectivity. The internet, especially our infrastructure in the United States, was meant to be wide open so everybody could communicate. And there's a price with that, right?
Yeah.
And that is the cost to secure these things properly. We also have, a lot of clients with compliance requirements. So, everything from financial services to healthcare to defense contractors, education, they all have to follow certain compliance requirements. So we help them build these programs and get them there in an alignment and support them through all that and maintain and improve their organizations over time. And then we also do what's called penetration testing, where we're actually hacking into their networks and their web applications and cloud
stuff.
environments. Yeah, that's where the wizards are. They're doing the deep tech stuff and always trying to engineer new exploits, finding ways into companies. So it's really cool because it's there's that side of it, but there's even a physical side of it. Right. It's easier for me to walk into a building and start plugging thumb drives into open computers and things like that and planting malware than it is to, get through their external network infrastructure and environment. So there's a human element and social engineering component around all this where we have to train and equip the humans to recognize these malicious activities, and we'll test them on that too. So which can be kind of fun when it gets to be in person and not just through electrons and cable.
Well, I do want to come back because that sounds like a lot of fun stuff we could dig into and talk more detail around. That gives a good idea of who you are, what you do now. Take us on some of your career journey.
Yeah, so I've have a very unconventional path, and as I know you do as well from what I've read and heard. But I've never really fit in places. Like I've always gone kind of against the grain, and maybe some purposely, some accidentally, but. Let's just say growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of friends. Like I spent a lot of my time doing solo activities like mountain biking and archery and things like that. Not super popular at the time. They've grown in popularity, but, and then also I moved to Arizona when I was really young. So when it's 115 out in the summer, you spend a lot of time indoors, and I spent a lot of time on computers. So, I wanted to know how they worked and what I could do that was against the grain, what I could do that wasn't, the normal usage of those devices. And I didn't want to be restricted by the software and the things. And so that led me into getting really into the figuring this stuff out and manipulating the machines. And that led me into, back then, computer class in school was just typing. It was just typing class. That's all they had. Now they've got all kinds of cool programs and stuff, not back then. And so at the time, I would constantly be getting kicked out of the computer classes because I'd be hacking the networks. I'd be locking the teachers out of their own systems. And nothing against them, but they didn't take the time to learn this stuff, and they were there to teach typing and not the inner workings of the machine. So I'd send obscene messages across the room to my buddy or whatever, or random people, like with an error message that you had to click the OK button to get out of, but it would move around the screen when you drag the mouse over it. So there's, got a bunch of kids chasing this little error message, and the teacher's freaking out. What's going on? So anyway, that was kind of the nefarious side of things. But luckily back then it was just a slap on the wrist. It wasn't like go to jail kind of thing. Now they don't take that kind of stuff so lightly. But what that led to is when I was a kid, my dad gave me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad when that first came out, Robert Kiyosaki, and he said, read this, it's right on. And I read it, and I was hooked on entrepreneurship from that point on, from business. And so,
how old were you?
Probably 10 or 11.
Wow,
if I remember
that's pretty
correctly.
early for that book.
So yeah, it was probably right around that age, maybe 12. But middle school time, and so I read that, and I got a couple things. I realized, one, girls weren't super interested in my computer skills. I was like, I'm just nerding out all the time on the machines and stuff. But I read these things, and I started to read about marketing and sales, and I was like, wow, that's interesting, because if I could do that stuff too, maybe I could make something out of this. And so that actually started my journey into doing little entrepreneurial ventures. I started doing websites. And at the time that was a brand new thing. If you had a website at the time, you were like cutting edge. So I'm old. I know, I get it. But, these are a smaller or mid-market company with a website, they're showing it off to their friends and everything. Now it's like, what do you mean you don't have a website? That would be so different world back then. I started doing some outsourcing to Russia before outsourcing was really a known thing, because I learned on the internet that they could do stuff for $7.50 an hour that I didn't know how to do. That would cost at least $75 an hour in the States, if not more. So at the time. So anyway, websites, that took me through. Really through high school, and even into college, I did a little bit of that.
Cool.
But I got into some other stuff too. I mean, I did a exterior painting franchise when I was in college. But I went through high school into University of Colorado, and the thing is, I just kind of went there because it was like, that's kind of what my parents expected me to do, is go to college after I never really felt like that was the right path for me, and it wasn't. 9/11 happened when I was in high school, and that was digging at me. But I was out in Arizona. I was far removed from where it actually happened, but I think it dramatically affected the whole country, of course, even to this day.
Yep.
But I'd also always been interested in the special operations community, because my dad was drafted into Vietnam and, had a just horrific experience and stuff. But he used to talk about the little that he did ever talk about it. He would talk about these special operations guys that he met while he was out there doing some intelligence work and stuff. And he would talk about them like they just walked on water, like these mythical creatures, And so then I would watch stuff like Rambo, or I would, or things like MacGyver, right, which is based off of a Green Beret, a special forces engineer. And I was like, wow, these are, they're larger than life characters. They could do anything. And so it was intriguing, but there was no way I should have done that path. I was 135 pounds, skin and bone. I was not made for that kind of thing, mentally, physically, anything like that. But in college, I was kind of there to kind of check in the box, I guess. I was, going to school, partying a bunch. I was doing the work and getting enough, good enough grades to pass classes and stuff. But I was empty there. And, years later, I realized that's because God was using that experience in my life to lead me to my next path. Though I didn't know God at the time, I was just out there, pushing through on my own. So with that, I learned through a friend at college that I could go through a program called the 18 X-ray program, where if I pass all the tests and I did all this stuff the right way and everything, all the stars aligned, then I could get into this path to become a special forces soldier. And again, I had no business being. I was still 135 pounds, skin and bone. I was not the guy that you would pick out of a lineup of any guys. Like, yeah, that guy's going to be a Green Beret. That was not that. I was not going to be that guy. But I've learned over the years that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So if he has a purpose for you or a reason for you to go somewhere, he'll find a way to make it happen. And that was my journey. So I went in and I enlisted the middle of my sophomore year. So I finished off that year, and the summer I went to basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. That was, they used to run basic, like, it was brutal. I mean, we're talking like low crawling through our own vomit. It was not a pretty thing. Like these guys were brutal. These drill sergeants, it was a wake up call. But it was one that I needed.
I want to keep going on that story for sure, but pause real quick and tell me, because you're saying simultaneously, right? You're saying you were absolutely not the guy that should have been doing that. No matter how many guys you lined up, that wasn't for you. What made you choose to go take the attempt at it then?
I felt called and convicted to go push myself through something. I think I needed a bigger challenge. At that point in life, I needed really to prove to myself that I could do something extremely difficult, that I could bring myself into the realm of excellence that's expected when you're operating in that world, and put myself among those individuals. So I think it was a combination of that and that intrigue that I had as a kid growing up around this stuff. I always loved the outdoors, I'd wear camouflage stuff and all that. So combination of things, but that's what, hey, I'm not happy here in what I'm doing at college. I'm, as an economics major with a business minor, and I'd write, 5-6 page equations that would give me an answer to something that was not usable in real life. And it was still kind of like a best guess. Yep. And I just didn't, I wanted to get down to something that was truly like, where the rubber meets the road.
Really tangible.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So continue the story then.
Yeah, so I went in basic training, airborne school, and then went into what was called SOPSI 1 at the time. They've changed this, but a Special Operations Preparation Course 1. You've probably heard like Navy SEALs have Hell Week. This was 4 of those back to back, and it was grown men crying just because of the sheer pain. They wouldn't let people quit for the first 3 days, and it was brutal. The day 3. there's a gong, you know, you go
Oh, yeah.
up and there's just a huge line
Waiting.
all the way down. Yeah. There was about 400 of us started this
Yeah.
course, and about 40 went on to Special Forces assessment and selection. So
Wow.
we had to get weeded out through that and then go on. And I mean, that course was incredibly valuable, but incredibly just brutal. I mean, guys getting infections from just being in the mud and water all the time. It was lots of injuries and stuff like that, but it made everything else a little bit easier in comparison.
Oh,
so
sure.
it wasn't easy, but that was pretty intense. So, you know, I was able to get through that, again, not on my own accord, but was able to push through, go on, got through assessment and selection, got selected to continue on the course, went through, some more, a bunch more training, basically, end to end, about close to 2 years in all.
Okay.
And so, lots of different, courses for unconventional warfare operations and all the things that you need to know. I was an engineer on the team, so doing demolitions, breaching, field fortification, things like that. And then later on, I got into more of the human intelligence operations world. So a little, parallel skill, but so yeah, I graduated the course, and I was put that Green Beret on my head, and it's like everything seemed to change. I went from lower enlisted to a non-commissioned officer. Just walking around base and everything, like people look at you differently, they treat you like differently. You kind of put yourself on a pedestal. I kind of probably thought a little higher of myself than I should have.
Sure.
But I went to my team, and then it's like being thrown like a little pup being thrown in a pack of wolves. I mean, now we're playing with the big dogs. Now it's go time, and that was another rude awakening, like it's constant rude awakenings, all the way through. But it helped me grow. It helped me. That's what I needed at that time in my life, and now I got to operate with the best in the business, best in the world at what they did in these unconventional warfare operations, and. Then the training really just started. So I'd gone through all this stuff just to get enough foundation to even speak the language.
Yeah.
And then we really got into the deep stuff.
Wow.
So that brought me, my first deployment, in Afghanistan was, pretty vicious. We didn't even have a whole team. We went in with 8 guys. Probably no reason to go into all the depth there, but lots and lots and lots of close combat. And, that was life changing. That's where I realized that, hey, we're all way more fragile than we think, and life is incredibly precious, and we need to cherish it. You know, so, so through that experience, it definitely changed my way of thinking, and I'm grateful for it, because it allowed me to see the extremes of both good and evil. I wouldn't wish war on anybody, but I feel absolutely blessed to have had that experience, because it allowed me to see the contrast in the world and people and within myself that I don't know that I would have been able to experience elsewhere. And, losing lots of friends and taking lives and all these things that go on in that environment, it changes your perspective on life. And I think if you have to fight to keep your head on your shoulders the right way, because the enemy will try to get in your mind and try to take you down. And you see it all the time with all the PTSD and veteran suicides and all these things. I've been really blessed to just have the ability to kind of understand what's going on in my mind and fight back and change my lens and things like that over the years. And through that, I just learned so many life lessons about that have carried me into business and leadership, and then more importantly, being a husband and a father.
Yep.
So yeah, that was that. What? Long story short, went on more training, another Afghanistan deployment, all that, and then I got out in 2009. So my enlistment came to an end. I'd never gone in with the idea of being a lifer and doing it. Sometimes I kick myself for not staying in longer, because it was so much training, and that it's well over $1 million for each Green Beret just to go through their initial training. So the U.S. taxpayer dollars, we're going to work in that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but it also kind of, I got out and I went kind of completely away from that, just straight in the civilian sector, didn't do any kind of contracting or additional intelligence work or anything like that. And I got into the real estate industry. So I got into the real estate industry because it was 2009 and everybody was saying how terrible real estate is, right? Because we had this big crash.
Yep. Nobody
Nobody knew we were at the bottom. And I said, well, if that's where everyone's running from, that's where I'm going. It's just hard-headed.
Same mindset you just left. You're like,
exactly.
take on the hard work.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And it actually, it was a blessing though. I read all the books I could on, because I didn't have any background on this stuff. I started asking around, even before I got out, around the base in Fayetteville, North Carolina. There were, I went to the banks. I talked to them about loans. I met a local, a really successful realtor and investor who had kind of taken me under his wing and showed me what he does and all that. So I was starting to learn from people in the business, and then ended up starting a business with a couple partners, moved up to the DC area, then to the Baltimore area, built 2 businesses out of that. And those are kind of your typical entrepreneur story. Just about went broke doing it, burning through my savings.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we just got some traction and got profitable and kept going and growing, and people got wind of what we were doing and all that stuff. So, but then really just got tired of the living on the East Coast. Nothing against the East Coast. It just wasn't home for me.
Yeah.
I need open space, outdoors, public land, all of that. And, so I wanted to come back to the west side of the country.
Yeah.
So,
Were you originally from Idaho?
no, actually,
I
I was born in Northern California.
Okay.
Moved to Arizona when I was young, into the North Phoenix, Scottsdale area.
Okay.
And then, I've been in Boise for about 5.5 years.
Okay, awesome.
So,
Yeah, very cool. We've been here about 7 years, and again, I think a lot of the people that have moved here for same types of things, somewhere that's a nice living environment, safe to live, the weather, there's kind of a whole mix of things. But I'd love to circle back a little bit on some of your story. And first, again, thank you for your service.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Huge respect for all of our service people. I have a couple of siblings in the military as well. One brother that actually just became a B-52 pilot in the Air Force. So
awesome.
Shout out to them. A couple questions that pop up, even then going all the way back to like basic training, and I forget what you call the week, but the 4 weeks of really intense training.
Yep.
I'm curious your response to, because I've heard a couple other special forces people talk about, like, you go from 400 people entering that, and even those 400 people are typically fit. They are very strong mentally. They think that they're going in like, this is my thing. I think, right?
Yeah.
Most of those 400 are like, they could be qualified.
Absolutely.
What is it about that narrowing all the way to the 40? What do you think some of that difference is, mentally, character, whatever, that carries those that make it through, those that don't?
Yeah, it's 100% mental, because again, all these guys, they were the ones you would pick on for your football team or whatever way. I'd be the last one, right? And so it was mental, and it was really incredible to see that, because I'd see guys washing out that I really looked up to. I was like, how did if he didn't make it, how am I going to make it? And so it's mental. All the physical stuff that you see in the movies and on TV and all that is to get to you mentally, right? When you don't sleep for 3 days, when you're not eating, when you're just constantly exhausted, they want to understand how you're going to function in the worst case scenarios. And do you have the mental ability to pick yourself up and keep going no matter what? Because, you could have you could be the, incredible, phenomenal athlete and all that stuff. But if you have to go home and sleep in a warm bed at night in order to maintain that level of performance, that world of special operations is not going to be the right one for you, you know? So, the physical aspect is important. Physical fitness is critical, especially so you don't get injured. Like that's the main thing. You got to prevent injuries, right? But it's all about getting you mentally, and they'll do that. There are, through different parts of training, I mean, there's trained psychologists behind this stuff. Like they know how to get to and pick out those demons and pull them to the surface and stuff. And they're very good at it. So they've been doing this for enough years. They've done it. There's a lot of science behind it, but especially the hardest thing for me is, and a lot of guys, is lack of sleep. Because lack of sleep, and that's why they use it for interrogation tactics and different things. Lack of sleep will really, really get at you and really hinder performance in a major way. That's why, and even in business, we have to be conscious of getting that rest and recuperation. I'm guilty of just heads down. We're just going to power through and all that, but that's not always the best way, right? We lose our creativity. That's
why I love hearing these things, because, and this is why I love stories, no matter people's background, right? It's like different parts of life, hearing the stories and talking about how you overcome certain things. Like, no matter what the walk of life was, there's something to learn from it to take to what you do now.
Absolutely.
And that's why I love these questions, is like, and I still want to even ask more. You just explained what some of the biggest challenges are in that scenario, yet you were one that you said shouldn't have made it, did. What were some of those things for you that helped you not quit, not give up? What were some of the tactics? Because I'm sure for every single person, even that made it, they probably were close multiple times.
Right.
No?
Oh, yeah. It's always right there. The cadre, you'll be out on a ruck march and you'll be 15 miles in or whatever, and you're just beat down, and the cadre drive up, next to you in the pickup, and they got their dog next to them and donuts in the truck, and they'll be, hey, you can throw your ruck in the back right now and quit, and you can pet my dog, and you can have a donut, and they really, will really mess with you. And the cool thing about that course is it's highly, they don't yell at you. They don't need to. They get at you. They don't need to yell, scream, anything like that. They'll just, okay, you don't want to do the exercise. I got all the time in the world. And they'll get like a camp chair and sit down and be like, we'll just keep going, And so one thing that really stuck with me, and I don't even remember who told me this, but they said that if you quit this course, and that's what most guys do, all right? If you quit, it's going to make it that much easier to quit the next hard thing in life. And that's going to make it that much easier to quit the next hard thing. And before you know it, you're going to develop a habit, and you're just going to quit things that come up because things get hard. And that scared me to death. It's like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life quitting things that could be really great.
Yep.
And so that was a big factor of just I committed to myself, don't quit. I was willing to die before I quit that course. I went 2 weeks on a broken foot, through the backcountry of North Carolina, rucksacks, carrying all kinds of weight, all that, because to me, it was like there was no other option in my mind. If I lived, they'd have to either kick me out or, so there was a conviction there. But again, I think it's also a calling too. It wasn't like, this is what I have to do. It's not what I'd love to do or be someday or whatever. It's like, that's it. I've burned my ships,
I was waiting for a pause, because I was going to say that. I was like, that whole mindset of burning the boats, right? Of, if you don't give yourself an option B, it is, I'm doing this until I either die on training or they kick me out. Like, as soon as you don't mentally give yourself options, you keep going.
Right. It's counterintuitive, because, and even in the Army, we're told about PACE plans, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, and you've got backups. Well, that's true when you're going after, you're doing operations and you need to accomplish certain things and have backup plans already in place. But when it comes to something that you're that dedicated to, yeah, you've got to be truly called and dedicated to that. You've got to understand, and maybe not even understand fully, but there's got to be a why behind it that's bigger than yourself and that's all encompassing in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's true if you're doing a business or you're going after some sort of, maybe for some people it's like getting that PhD, or maybe it's achieving a certain accomplishment in the sport that they do, or whatever it is. Maybe it's that first marathon or whatever.
Yeah. So we went through, and thanks again for going back and sharing. I think there's some just great mental takeaways there for people to think about. So then we went got into real estate. You went in through that. What was the journey that ended up taking you from real estate to getting into cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I was in real estate. I had moved back to Arizona. I was getting ready to start my own business, but I met a guy who's to this day a very good friend of mine, and just learned so much from. But he had started a company flipping houses in Arizona, and so I said, "Hey, well, rather than start my own thing, I'll jump in here and we'll see if I can help you build this." And so did that, and it was just a couple of us in an office at the beginning, and then I took on the lead role in building out the investor relations side of the business, because we had to fuel our operations with investor capital to go out and then buy more assets and all that. So then we went from houses to apartments, and then we went from apartments into hotels, and then self-storage and some office and new development stuff. So we grew over time. And we ended up, growing. We built a strong team and all that. So we went from, we all kind of have to do everything to, I was able to kind of lead the direction, the branding, the messaging, and the investor relations side, all the mechanisms to bring in capital, and fuel that. And so we did that. And that was awesome. I think at the time I phased my way out of the business, we'd probably raised around $300 million, is my estimate, and we'd bought Crown Plazas and Hiltons and Hampton Inn and Suites, and we a bunch of apartment communities and all that. So it was really cool to see that growth and a rapid growth. I mean, that was just a few years. I mean, we were always Inc. 500 list, if not, or Inc. 5,000 list rather. And then some of those years Inc. 500. Wow. And just, it was grow, fast pace. And it was awesome. When I had left, I think the hotels employed about 400 people. And then we had around 70 core staff, something around that. Yeah. So that was really, awesome. Really an adventure. Yeah. Learned so much through that. But about 2015 or early 2016 timeframe, I realized, hey, I don't think I'm being called to continue down this path. I learned so much, love the business. I mean, the business still runs today and they're just massive. But I really was seeing a lot about what was going on in cybersecurity and with all the breaches on the news and things like that. It's like, really feel called to go back and do something that brings me back to a little bit of what I enjoyed about the military special operations realm is I want to protect good people. I want to enable people and the economy to grow and thrive and help cut off that evil, or at least hinder some of those attacks and things like that are going on. And so I really felt called to go that direction. And that brings me back to my tech nerd roots, so it kind of,
the original,
it kind of came full circle. Yeah. And so that's what, that's when it started Silent Sector in 2016. And then we've just kind of grown organically since then, over the years. And, we built that to, like I said, the mission, protect the backbone of the American economy and way of life. So we do that with companies all over the country. We do focus on U.S. companies for the most part. But also the team is very much, I wanted to operate as close as we could in this, or as close as we can in the civilian world to how we did things in the special operations community. So on an A team or ODA as a Green Beret, when somebody says they're going to do something, there's no like checking in to see if it got done. You could bet of course it was done. They said they were going to do it. There was there weren't and I had to learn a lot about leadership getting out because it's different in this world, right? There weren't, it wasn't like, well, somebody didn't do their job because they, weren't feeling good, or somebody, hurt their feelings or whatever. Like emotions weren't really a part of it. It's like mission focus, execute. And the way leadership works there is there's quite a bit of difference. There are a lot of lessons to be learned, but they're quite a bit of difference from the, there's a bit more empathy and things needed in the civilian sector. So, but taking that all into account, I've wanted and always worked tirelessly on creating an environment where every team member can grow and thrive at their highest and best with their skill sets and their career paths. And that's what we've done at Silent Sector. So just an awesome team. And we've always been very much about quality over quantity. We never wanted to be the Walmart of cybersecurity, nothing against Walmart, but we want to be the niche, ultra elite, best at what we do. And so our team blows me away every day with what they come up with, how they're innovating, how they're running some of these attacks, simulated attacks on behalf of our clients, all that kind of stuff. So
I'm curious to hear a little more on some of the crossover of like, what are some things that maybe you think you as a company do internally, team building, culture-wise, training, workshops, some tactical things of how have you taken that experience to develop your team or identify the right members or hiring process? Like how have you been able to do that successfully?
So it's there's a bunch of different components, but first and foremost, it starts with the people leading the company. Myself and my business partner, we have to hold ourselves to a certain standard, right? If we're not leading by example, that's a big failure, right? So we have to first and foremost, show up, be there, be focused, be ready to go and energized. But the other thing is in the Army, we called it big boy rules. In the special operations community, it's not so much by rank and stuff. Everybody's on a first name basis. It's and you're just expected to do the right thing and they know you don't need people breathing down your neck telling you what to do all the time and stuff like that. That's how we believe business should be as well, right? So we're a bit more of a horizontal organization, not a lot of hierarchy, because we only work with professionals that we don't have to babysit, because they are motivated and driven to do the right thing from the beginning. And so it comes down to working with the right people. And you can I've learned a lot about high performers versus low performers over the year. And when I say low performers, I don't mean they're like a garbage person or anything like that. It's just that role that they are in is not the right fit. It's not their calling. It's probably a drag for them. It's, they dread going to work in the morning, that kind of thing. That's what I mean by low performers. The actions in the role, not the person themselves. So, because I believe everybody has areas and directions in life where they can thrive and just be like among the best at what they do. Finding that can be a hard thing for most of us. So
I feel like most people have not found that.
Right.
It's something I've actually been thinking about a lot recently, and I don't have this defined yet, but I'm like, how do I unpack some of the journey that I've had where I used to have a job I didn't love, and now I've found a path to do something that I absolutely love. And I think even when you find what is your purpose or what you can really get behind, it completely changes how you show up, how you perform, changes what you do in your free time. What do you want to learn about? What do you want to research about? It amplifies you getting better at it. I think it's the path of truly what you hear people say of, right? Was it Steve Jobs? If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, or something along those lines. And it's like many people today have followed some path they were told to go down. Now they're sitting in a role that they absolutely don't love, and they don't even want to be there, and they don't want to show up. And it's like, how do we start showing people a way to find what their purpose or passion actually is?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, I still struggle with what do I want to do when I grow up, I'm still figuring out, because I'm yes, I have a cybersecurity company, but I'm business guy. I know I love is business, just for the challenges and the learning and the people that you meet. I believe business is God's way of connecting people that would never have a reason to connect otherwise. Relationships are created, innovation. And so I love business for business. And so to me, it's not so much about the industry or whatever. I'm interested in, like, if you're in the laundromat business, I want to know all about laundromats because I think that's cool, you know, or you're in the trucking industry, I want to know about trucking, you know, so it doesn't really matter. But for some people it does. They were called their whole life to be in healthcare or something like that. And that's great. But for those of us that kind of like a lot of different things, I'd say a couple things. One, who you're around when you're doing business can make a huge amount of difference about in the fun you're having, right? Because you could be in two different businesses doing the same thing, you know, selling paper products, let's just say, right? So the office, you know, right? You could be in one where it's just like a miserable group of people, a bad culture, whatever, and you could hate your job. You could be doing the same thing where it's just a great culture. It's exciting. There's room for growth. You're challenged. And that's the other thing. A business environment shouldn't be one where it's just like everything's easy and everybody's happy all the time. There should be challenges because we want people to be growing, because that's going to bring them more joy internally. So again, a lot of it is you got to be very careful about who you are around. As business owners, we get the opportunity to have more say in that. But if for people that are employees of organizations, they need to make sure they align with an organization that fits, that excites them, that energizes them. The other thing I would say too is don't always necessarily rely on that environment to be created for you. Sometimes we have to create that for ourselves.
Yeah, that's very true. Another thing that came up, actually back to Steve Jobs again, but that really aligns with how you're saying you build your team and really the A players, right? Is he talked a lot about the way that he built Apple to be successful was realizing that hiring A players, because of the things you've described, they are independent, they don't need hand-holding, they are driven, they have a mission. And the other thing that's unique about that is that the conversation around A players like working with A players. They work well together. They thrive off each other. They push each other. Where his, you know, the way he talks about then B players or C players is B players don't want to work with A players because they're threatened. Right. And they don't even want to work with B players because they're threatened. They always want someone that's lower than them so they feel more important. And, you know, and again, not to like call people out of, hey, you're this level player, but it's something that as individuals, you realize, you know, and maybe this even goes back to your journey in the military, right? Is when you drive yourself to become the best at what you can do, that's turning yourself into an A player.
Absolutely.
If you want to be at that level, you have to realize you have to find your purpose. You have to drive yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you, right?
Absolutely. Well, you have to do, you have to take the full responsibility in that. The other thing too is a lot of people, they'll say, you know, this an A, like this person is an A player because they're succeeding at work or whatever. What I've found over the years is that a lot of times when you look at people, how they live their lives in general, that can tell you a lot about who's an A player versus not. How do they talk about the people around them and the people in their past, right? Especially the people that maybe they didn't agree with or they had hard times with. Do they down talk them and trash them, or do they talk in terms about, hey, we had disagreed, but here's what I learned out of that? Yeah. Right. So a lot of times you can see that in people and then how they live their lives, outside of work as well. One thing that's interesting, and not saying that everybody's got to be a pro athlete or anything like that, but I've found people that, like guys that I've mountain bike raced with and stuff like that, a lot of times they're pushing themselves there. They're also pushing themselves in their career path. So these are guys, they're really like, you know, they're not pros or anything, but they're always working to get better, stronger, faster. Same thing in that, but also I've always definitely held people in the highest esteem that have do this across the board, but first and foremost with their family life. Do they put that time and attention in with their wife and their kids, or their spouse, right? Their husband, if it's so the thing that we've got to remember is that, right, it's not all about, we see all this stuff about business, right? But what do we really live to work, right? Our families are they need to take priority, right? Our communities, all of that. So we've got to focus on that. And then, in my belief, put God first above all else. But we have, without our families, like if our family life is really in the tank, it's going to be really hard to show up every day and perform at work. If we let our health go, it's going to be really hard to show up at our best at work. Now, things come up. People get, diseases and cancers and terrible things. But a lot of times you see those people come out fighting, and they're better than they've ever. They gain something out of that. So I think that's important. And then also understanding what mindset people are coming from. If somebody's coming from a victim mindset, that's pretty easy to spot, and that's a big red flag. In any area of life, bad stuff happens. Terrible things that people don't deserve happen, but it's what they do with that afterward that's going to make all the difference.
Yeah. It's another. I mean, there's so many. I love cliche sayings and I tell people, I'm like, well, they're cliche for a reason because they get used a lot because they're true. But it's just the saying around that exact example of, right, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so much about what you do. Because you can find people that have come from every single walk of life, at every stage of life, the worst circumstances, that have built a completely different life, completely different outcomes. And then you find people that don't. And those people, they speak on it, right? And it's like, hey, I didn't walk that same difficult path, so I can't look at the people who have it really bad and tell them, oh, it's, you choose and get past it. But when you find the person who's gone through the same thing, that has found that path, that can talk back to and say, like, look, I was in your shoes, I've been there, and this is how you have to overcome it.
That's powerful, and being able and that's what I would encourage people to think about too, is like that struggle that you're going through, that no matter how brutal it is, that can be used for the good of others, because you're going to push through one foot. Some days it's just one foot in front of the other, but it's all seasonal. Times change. As long as you have that hope and push through, but then you can relate and you can have empathy for people that are struggling with that, later on. You've got through, you've broken through and learned from it and grown from it. Take that and use that to help other people, right?
Yeah.
And so the struggles that we have can be such a blessing in the long term if we let them be and don't dwell on them for the rest of our life and kind of resign ourselves to that victim mentality.
Yeah, totally. You're I know you've mentioned a few times your faith and God leading you, and I as well am a believer. I claim to be a Christian, and I don't push it on people a lot. But when when people organically talk to me about my how do I stay so calm? How am I so calm? How do I show up so much? It's like when I think about having those conversations, it's like it does come from, what do you believe? Mm-hmm. What is your purpose? There's more to life than work. Mm-hmm. And though there are a lot of successful people that maybe don't have any type of faith, like one of the reasons I also don't just push my faith is I'm like, I know there's so many things that people believe that go in so many different directions, and everyone has to find their own path and believe for themselves what they believe. Right. Whatever that is the foundation, though.
Absolutely.
Because it drives how you show up, the decisions you make because of what you believe are true or not, again, even into your family life and then into your work life. And I've been trying to, I haven't actually talked about this ever before, but I'm trying to work on how I could even help people identify. There's so many people who are lost. Like, I hate my job, I don't know what to do. And it's like, those are the first questions, is like, what's your foundation? Like, what are you living for?
Yeah.
And it's not, again, to push just my own faith, but like when people ask how I've done what I've done, that's where it comes back to. Mm-hmm. It's like I probably could not have kept going through all the difficulties of business and failure and risk if I didn't believe that I wasn't supposed to be doing it and that someone else was in control and was putting me here for a reason. And I would have quit a long time ago.
Oh yeah. Well, your beliefs drive your thoughts, right? Your thoughts drive your actions drive your results. And so it is absolutely, it's a chain of events, and you have to go back to it. And our beliefs get change and shape over time. Like growing up, I was agnostic. I didn't, I thought, oh, what do I need God for? You know, I'd heard of Jesus. I went to a Christian summer camp as a kid and stuff, mostly to swim in the pool and play and stuff. Like it didn't really resonate with me. It wasn't till war that I realized, you know, I mean, we're going out and we're constantly fighting the Taliban in close combat, and we get back. And at night, you know, we're coming back to a tent. I'm sleeping in a dirty cot, right? At the foot of my bed, I've got a 2x4 cross where my body armor and my helmet hang. You know, it's kind of ironic. It's like you're sleeping. It's almost like you're sleeping in your own grave, right? And there are all kinds of other things with that, you know, going on at that time, but everything I had out there for deployments in 2 boxes right next to my cot. That's it. So, and then knowing that, hey, this next mission might be the last. I mean, it was like half my team got Purple Hearts. You know, I mean, it was guys going back to Walter Reed, all kinds of stuff, and it was. So I'm like, well, this could be it. And so when everything else is stripped away from you. To me, the tendency, the inclination was to look up. And so I just started, I had heard the name Jesus. That was the extent of what I know, but I just prayed to Jesus. And I just, you know, hey, you know, will you bring us through this, you know? The interesting thing is that everybody who calls on his name with an open heart, he will show up. And he will show up at the best possible time. And his timing is always better than ours. But if we can just humble ourselves to say, hey, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And I don't mean to push it on anybody, but we also have to recognize that we all have faith in something, right? If you're an atheist, you have faith in the fact that something was created from nothing, that nothing created something, and that you know, that the earth just happened to have the right equation for life, you know, and a very, very small chance and such. And so there's always a belief that you have to come to. So to me, though, it was what turned out to be our last operation of my first deployment. It was a 3-day long fight with the Taliban, and it wasn't our first 3-day long fight, but this one was particularly brutal. And you know, at the end of it all, we were, you know, drug what was left back of our trucks with the working ones and stuff to the nearest fire base. And I was mad because, you know, I was pissed because one of the guys next to me, we lost, and a bunch of guys full of shrapnel and all kinds of stuff that were just a terrible set of circumstances. We lost that is what, and that operation was actually on the news and such. It didn't say who was behind it, just said coalition forces, but it was a big deal at the time. But we got back, and I was in a rage, and I was hyped up on adrenaline still. This is midnight, 2 a.m, something like that. We refit. Everybody else is racking out. I went and sat on the hood of a Humvee. I knocked an old cigar out of the aluminum tube. You know, I found it in my rucksack. I was like, oh, I didn't even know I had that still, and sat on the hood of a Humvee. And then all of a sudden, just going from rage, just a sense of like, I got to wind down to, all of a sudden the Philippians 4:7, I believe it is, talks about the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like out of nowhere, just this peace, this love, this comfort came down, and the words that came into my head were not my words. This is the first day of the rest of your life. And it's like immediately I knew what that meant. I was like, okay, wow, there is a God. This is real. And it took me all this because of how thick-headed I was and how hard-headed I was, like, to get there. And you see that a lot with, people are in a horrific car accident or they're fighting cancer or whatever, and they have to go through that. My wish for everybody is that they don't have to, don't be so hard-headed like I was. Just explore it with your heart, ask yourself those questions. To go back to what you said earlier, people have got to identify their faith. It's because they have faith in something. So asking, first of all, I think asking about what are their fears can help a lot, right? What do you fear? What are you really afraid of? And if we even ask ourselves that can help break down some of the barriers, because a lot of times the way we see ourselves is not the way, we're seen by God, and not even the way other people see us, So I think if we can really dig into what are you afraid, what are you really afraid of, what do you fear, and then why, and then keep asking the why question, right? I think they say like you got to ask why 5 times or something like that to get to the real answer. But most people, and myself included, for so many years, I don't need that. I can do this on my own, whatever. I didn't have the humility to ask those things of myself and really be honest about it, because I was afraid of what I would find.
Yeah.
So
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the journey a lot of people find themselves on. And, I think the other, well, there's so many parts of it really, but, people are afraid of what they'll find. A lot of it comes down to like people believe, if you believe in God, life gets boring and you're not allowed to do anything. And it's like people get so stuck in like what they spend their time doing and their money doing, or things that they think are wrong, even, that they're like, I don't want the answers if it means taking anything away that I want.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, you can't force people to believe it, but when you find something to believe in, that drives what you said earlier, right? Your belief drives your thoughts, your actions. I mean, all of that, it changes your life and how you operate. And I think, for me, it's people think I'm so calm even when there's so many issues going on. I'm like, well, that's because I know someone else is in control of every situation. Like, and actually that brings up a thought I almost said earlier about a lot of people, even when asking the question of like, is there a God, is, well, why do bad things still happen then, right?
Yeah.
And that throws a lot of people off because you don't just pray and everything's wonderful, right? There's still difficulties, and a lot of times things happen in life that we don't know why they happen the way they happen, and even bad things happen. Right. And we still have to trust that, well, it's a part of a bigger plan that we can't see right now.
Exactly.
It's something that could be used later. It's something that's going to change somebody. And, there's no easy path.
There isn't, and in Scripture, says we're made stronger through our turmoil, right? So when you look at things through the lens of eternity rather than just right here, right now, today, or the next, 5 years of my career, or whatever lens, people use. It's a different lens altogether, right? And the big things now become much smaller. But yeah, people do struggle with that. And I struggle with that a long time, especially as an early believer. It's like, I don't really understand this, but when we really get to understand that, yes, bad things happen, but God doesn't make bad things happen. We're in a fallen world, right? Yeah. I would challenge a little bit. I believe God is in control ultimately and has, sovereignty. We know what happens at the end, but we've also been given free will to sin, free will to screw up, free will to do what we want to do, because you can't have a relationship, right, with somebody if they're forced to be, if they're a machine, if they're forced to do whatever. So we are in a world that is full of sin and fallenness, and bad things happen, and good people die, and children, innocent people die, children and stuff, and people that didn't deserve it, but that's the nature of the world we live in. So while yes, he's in control, he also works through us in this world, in order to be, hands in different things, right? And we'll work through our callings to be hands in different things. So we also have to realize that, hey, one, he's not causing these things. So let's not put that, because if we recognize, a good, holy, perfect God, we also have to recognize the opposite, which is just the worst evil you could imagine. And both exist. So he's not causing these things, but he can be, he is certainly a light in the world and a helping hand. And why not always, right? That's a hard question. Why didn't he save this, baby in this car accident or whatever? That's a tough question, and we don't always know. We're not always going to have the answers to the why. Things did or didn't happen, but we do know the truth about the goodness and what's already been done on our behalf. That is above and beyond. That only points to a loving, incredible God. To take. I couldn't imagine. The sacrifice of one of my children, but he loved people so much and loved this world so much. Only his sacrifice was sufficient to cleanse us of sin, right? Because you can't have a holy, perfect heaven and let sin in and corrupt it, right? That doesn't work. There has to be there has to be justice, right? And the only thing that can even meet that is, God sends himself essentially to suffer and die on our behalf, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, we could go for hours on that, but
well, I hope it gets people thinking. Maybe it's there's people who have questions around it or are thinking along these lines or looking for something that it'll spark some.
Yeah, I would hope people that are looking, regardless of where they're looking for it, just ask. Is this going to be lasting? What happens if this goes away, right? So if I'm looking, at wealth for my sense of self, satisfaction and happiness, well, what if that goes away?
Yeah.
Right. If I'm looking at a certain relationship or something like that, well, what if that goes away? Is that still going to be sustainable as far as like what I'm actually looking to achieve? So look for something that's going to be a constant and something bigger than yourself and meaningful and powerful. And that takes some searching, it's going to come to people in all different ways. And we never really know the rhyme or reason why, but when it hits hard and it's awesome.
Yeah. And I think a simple thing to do is to try to like slow down and zoom out and look at your life from a bigger lens, right? Because it's very easy for all of us to get in a tunnel vision of like exactly what I'm doing today. Like, and just like you were saying about rest and even business owners, right? Like we can get so focused on like the things right in front of us that if we don't step back and look at life as a whole and the priorities of life for why we're living and what we want to live for, and even the reminder of life is short. Right? What is the point of working for the next 40, 50, 60 years toward this one thing of wealth to then die and not have it?
Right.
Like, there is more to life than money, which comes to that definition of success, right? It's like, what is success?
Right.
I don't think there is one definition. I think it is a personal definition.
Yeah.
I think you define what does success mean to you? What has to happen in your life for you to say it was successful?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's and that can be tough too, because that can change. I think I've been guilty of like here, when I get here, then I'm going to be happy, and then you get there. It's like, okay, well that was, and I don't celebrate at all. It's just like on to the next, and on to the next. And I think, one of my realizations has been, I've accomplished a lot of my goals in life, and there's always the next thing. But what I really, really love is helping others accomplish theirs, because not because the goal's accomplished, but because of the self confidence and the learning and the growth that they experience through that. So if I can be a catalyst to that, whether it's our team members or friends or clients or whatever, just figuring out ways to be able to, help in that equation is, to me, that's probably the most rewarding thing in business is to see people grow and thrive around me. Because I've realized how empty it is when I'm just focused on me. And,
Totally.
And so, yeah, I know it's cliche. You hear it all the time, put others first and all of that, servant leadership and all that, but there's so much truth there.
It really is. Yeah. My favorite thing to happen in business is not to win another client, to make another dollar. It is getting a message from someone who's like, that podcast episode like changed my life, or going to your conference, I found a new job, or hearing the outcome or the impact that anything I did impacted somebody in some way that is positive for them. It's like, that is why I do anything I do. It is so much more fulfilling and rewarding than my business growth or something else happening. It is just, how can you impact other people?
Well, and I love what you do here at RCN for that reason, because you have different mediums to get these empowering messages out to people, and things that in ways that will resonate with them. Like, I believe video is incredibly powerful. Like, if you can't be in person, there's the next best thing. Yeah. And so to be able to do that, and for me personally, those different kinds of media have helped tremendously throughout my career, because I've learned from all kinds of people, and I've certainly had a lot of in-person mentors as well, which is which nothing beats that. But next best thing, when I can watch a video that's empowering, that gives me that aha moment, that changes the way I was thinking about a certain challenge or situation, that's priceless.
Yep.
And so to be able, and that's with the connected world that we're in, to be able to reach people for the right reasons, because there's so much garbage out there. Yeah. We've got to put, the good information in front of good people, and help them grow and thrive and all that. And so it's really cool how you're able to do that, through your whole team here.
Yeah. It's, I found it as a gap, because for the same reason, as I was growing my first company, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't go to college. I learned while building by finding people on YouTube and watching videos. Awesome. And, it wasn't what inspired me to start, but it is absolutely what I kept learning from while I was building. I would have never started a podcast if I wasn't watching videos where I saw people talking about, you could start a podcast and build, and the ideas behind it. I would have never started a conference if I didn't go to a conference and hear about putting one on and like see the value. So much of what we can build comes from learning from other people. Mm-hmm. It is the shortcut. Right. It is learn from as many people as you can and dissect the good things, put them together, and not try to hit your head on the same wall over and over by yourself, not learning from other people. And I often call those people that I follow very closely online my like invisible mentors. Mm-hmm. Like, they're very visible, but they don't know I exist.
Right. Yep.
But I absolutely have learned so much from them. And so I dissected that idea and said, in a lot of our industry, I don't see anybody really doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to create this platform and this community and this audience and this conference that is the place for people in our space that follow us, that maybe don't follow other people. And part of what validated that for me was like, I kept talking to people, both at my conference and even online, of like, do you know who this is, or this is, or this is? And I'm naming big influencers that millions of people follow. Right. Nobody knew who they were. Right. And it opened this realization of like, I am that person to them. Yeah. They don't follow a bunch of these people. They're not on YouTube. And if they know me, I can now be this filter of like, bring all this good information and try to filter it through and give it to the community I'm building. And that just continues to spark like, more people can do that. Like, so there's a lot of conversations we're going to have moving forward actually about like brand and personal brand and building thought leadership content and getting active online, because, and this goes back to like, why would we do that? Mm-hmm. It's not because I want to be popular, I want to be an influencer. It's because if you have something that you're building, or you have a company that does a service that you truly believe in, and you believe in the impact it makes, and you believe in the value it gives, you absolutely should be doing everything you can to get it to more people, right?
Definitely.
It's not, and I'll tell you, even podcasting, like I'm off camera, I'm kind of shy. I don't walk up to people at events really and talk to them much. And so to do this was a growing pain for me and a learning, but I believe in the value that it provides so much that I'm like, I have to do this. And I even becoming this media face a little bit, there's people who start to even question that of like, oh, we see your face everywhere, or you're vlogging, or and it's this kind of like balance of cringiness versus like, but I have to do it because the more growth, the more people that we may touch, we may impact, we may educate. So when you believe in the mission, you do the work to accomplish the mission, no matter what. The boats have been burned.
It's funny you say that. Because I'm in the same boat. I feel like, a lot of the social media stuff is like self-promotion and all that. I love keynote speaking but not because it's, because look at how great I am. Not the case at all. But I love those aha moments and stuff, and just seeing and people that I get to talk to after that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this all differently now that I know this. And it's just really, really rewarding. And what you're doing, you do that in your own space, right? You just don't always get to see the end results because it's a one-way push a lot of times, but yeah, I think you're affecting more people than you could possibly know. And I really struggle with that idea of self-promotion and like doing all this stuff. But I was like, what if some of the greats, like, what if John Maxwell never started writing books because he was worried, like, oh, I don't want my name out there, or anybody. You've got, like, I see you've got Traction back there, Gino Wickman, right? Great EOS, great. Like, what if Gino's like, no, I don't want to. I don't know. I'm too humble for that. I'm not gonna put that out there. It's like, that would have been detrimental because we love the EOS model, So all these people that are contributing great things, like they had to get out there and put themselves out there. But I think it becomes very clear very fast between the ones that are out there just for self-promotion versus the ones that are promoting an idea or something bigger than themselves. So for you've got a whole conference of people coming together, relationships being formed, that's bigger than any of us, right? It's like all these people, all these minds and contribution of knowledge and everything like that versus the person that's just like, trying to look as good as they can on TikTok or whatever, right? That's not, that's not really giving anybody any value. In fact, the other opposite, right? It's making, especially young people, comparing themselves to these perfect social media personalities that aren't, they don't really exist. In fact, most of them are AI driven now anyway. They're not even real.
A lot of them nowadays, you don't know. That's true. No, but I tell people that all the time when it comes to like, hey, if you're going to start in content or you want to build, when I dissect trying to give advice of what has worked for me, so much of it has become, it's come from really truly where my heart was and where my passion was and the mission behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. But then I dissect and I'm like, you could follow some of the same paths I've done. The difference is it has to actually be authentic, because when you tell people about here's how you could do these tips and tricks and media and social, and you still can't do it with the main intention being this is for sales. I'm pushing this for that's a default. But how do you start with building relationships of people that might ever work with you? It's with building trust,
right?
And it's with giving value before you ever get anything back in return. And one of the reasons I think many businesses or individuals don't start down some of these journeys of content or podcasting or, getting their face out there is like, it takes a long time and it takes momentum and it takes time to get to the point that it might actually turn into a return. Most businesses are not going to put something into it if they're like, what's the ROI?
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. It is hard to measure in that, right? Because, if you're doing pay-per-click ads with Google, right? You could see, okay, well, this many views, this many clicks or resulted in this many sales. It's but when we're talking about education marketing, which is primarily what we do, and what I've always done in the investment world and cybersecurity, it's long-term empowering people, helping them think differently, but all kinds of things come from that. It is hard to put a number on it, but you can see certainly it raises the tide, as things go, and it not always super clear why, but we used to put on investment conferences when I was in that world. So similar thing, lots of big, rooms full of investors, subject matter experts, and all this stuff. And we didn't necessarily know what parts resonated or what, the reason why, but business would always increase.
Yeah.
So, it's like, okay, well, by correlation is not causation, but we're pretty sure this is working. So yeah, it is hard to make some of those things tangible sometime. I know that can be a challenge.
Well, out of respect for time, I think we'll start narrowing a little bit. We've covered a lot today so far. To bring it back to a little bit of what you focus on now, I think there's a lot of businesses who don't really even know where to start or even what to think about cybersecurity. And, I think even we actually internally were talking about it recently, even just like people trying to get into your systems and hack or whatever, like every employee on my team gets emails from me, right? Or text messages, go buy the gift cards or all these random things that are always happening. I know you get way deeper and way more in the weeds with full-on businesses, but like, what are some things that most people should be thinking about when it comes to protecting their data and maybe setting themselves up for success when it comes to cyber?
Gotcha. Well, so from the business perspective, the number one, business and personal, the number one failure organizations make, or people individually, is failure to make a decision and commit to actually doing something about cybersecurity and cyber risk management. So, and a lot of times that's from lack of education. Not they're bad people or anything like that. That's not the case. It's that a lot of times they think, they believe in myths. Like, we're too small to be a target for cyber criminals. Well, cyber criminals don't care about your size or even who you are, because they're just running bots, running mass scanning tools. They're looking at IP ranges. So they got number, kind of like, to break it down, like we all have a phone number for our phones, right? Same thing, external IP addresses, right? We've got digits that basically
they're just going
connect
through
our
all
network.
of them.
They go through a huge range. They're scanning, they're using tools. When something shows a vulnerability, throws up a flag, they can start looking into it. So that's not the only way, but that's a thing that happens.
Yeah.
So a lot of times these attacks, they're not targeted toward one person. There are certainly a lot of targeted attacks, but I would argue the bulk of them are not. They're looking for low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
So cyber criminals, the thing we have to realize is that cyber criminals are looking, probably not, I don't know what the latest stats are, probably 90% of cyber attacks are financially motivated. This is a business for them. This is a deep, dark business, crime rings all over the world, nation-state threat actors that fuel this. But they are looking for return on investment, meaning if you are more expensive to breach than it's worth in return, if they're successful, then they're just going to move on. There's no reason to they're going to go to the low-hanging fruit, the easier targets. That changes if you're Google or the NSA or something like that. For most of us at, normal business levels, it's not about being perfect. It's about just continuous improvement, being harder than those around us. So as from an attack surface perspective. So, a couple things, we need to look at is just like a lot of it comes down to good technology hygiene, right? So are we updating our systems? Are we keeping with the latest and greatest, right? If we're using a machine, because we don't want to buy a new laptop, but this one's too old to even run operating system updates and nothing's working right, like that's an easy target, deprecated stuff. So we've got to make sure we're just practicing good hygiene. We can't get lazy with things like passwords and stuff. Your dog's name 01 ! Doesn't cut it anymore, right? So we've got to do basics like use password management tools, for example, where you have one strong, long password that then can auto-save and populate different passwords for everything that you use, right? Because it could be no fault of your own. You could have the great password that you use over and over, and some site gets breached and that gets compromised, and then they use that on other sites, then that stuff happens a lot. In fact, you can buy huge lists or even get them free on the dark web and deep net of just stolen usernames, passwords, all that kind of stuff. It's all out there. So So there, and then a lot of this is around awareness, right? So people, it's easier for me to get somebody to give me their username and password unwittingly. And you say, oh, well, what about multi-factor authentication? Yeah, we can get that handed over as well. Than it is to break through different, levels of security and such and do it from the technical side. So the people are our weakest link, but also our most valuable asset in all this, right? If they're able to recognize malicious activity, respond to it, all that. Give you, for instance, I've seen this many times, but I've been talking with a company that has their vendors are getting basically what the criminals are doing are spinning up look-alike domains. So it's very close. So instead of like an L, it might be a 1 or something like that in the domain name. Looks very similar. And they're trying to inject themselves in conversations with the finance team, right? Because then when they can start to get in conversations, they can say, hey, we got new wire information. Here it is.
I've gotten those emails.
You see, so just awareness of how these things go can go a long, long way. And there's a lot of great staff awareness training programs out there. You don't have to create the content yourself. There's free stuff online. There's paid stuff online. But training team members is a big thing that we have to do, because not only they're going to care more if you're training them and equipping them for stuff that's not only going to protect them, but at home with their families and that sort of thing. So if they understand good, technology hygiene, that's going to help tremendously. But then it also comes, tying to the human element a lot around, processes and procedures. So to take that example, right? Well, if a vendor requests a change of wire information, do we call up a known phone number and actually validate that and read that back to them? Or do we just go, okay, and send off I've seen it. I've seen $400,000, sent off to the wrong account.
Wow.
And and it's like,
that's, I was going to bring up, I was going to wait, but since you're right at that point too, I wanted to even bring up, just this week, I was watching a video of a ex-Navy SEAL guy that I have met. He was sharing on his socials about these fake accounts that are replicating him, that are reaching out to people asking for money and donations and stuff, all the way even to the point of there was one guy that was about to donate up to like $50,000 or something. And that individual asked for a phone call. They did a phone call, and they had AI voice of the guy that sounded exactly like him, have a conversation and everything. It's like, ooh, now this whole thought around where AI is starting to play with voice and video and how do you know what's real? The one thing that you just said that stood out was like a known phone number.
Right, yeah. You call that,
but
not the...
Some of that other tech is getting to the point that it's like, in the next year, 2, 3, what hopefully will happen with cybersecurity software, with these platforms to somehow identify fakes versus not, or AI generated versus not. It's getting a little wild.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I'm not, I'm not, doomsday guy or anything like that. But I don't know that there is any easy fix in like the next 3 to 5 years. Because it's cat and mouse. We've been using AI tools in the cybersecurity world for a long, long time. Cyber criminals have been using it, and we're always trying to figure out how to get ahead and figuring out new exploits and ways. But what you're referring to there in that real time deep fakes, where if I can sit, here, except we're on a Zoom meeting instead of in person, and I can look just like me, or you could look, and it's really somebody else. That's where it gets really, really challenging, especially in this world where we are working so much remote, so much remote work out there. So, couple things, like one, again, when you're reaching out to somebody using known contact information, not just whatever's, in the email or anything like that, but also when it comes to the deep fakes, because this has been a scam that's been going on for a long time. People will say that, hey, I have your your kid hostage in Mexico, right? And it's like, like an adult kid or like a, 18, 20-year-old or something like that went down for spring break or whatever. They'll call the parents and how do they know they were in Mexico? Because they see it on social media, because the kids are posting where they are all the time. It's all that information's out there. So they're seeing, okay, well, this person's in there. They're taking that, they're using that AI and regenerating the voice. They're calling the parents and saying, hey, we have a hostage. If you don't, give us this money, it's end of your kid. They play, voice sounds just like the kid. Parents freak out and all that. When really, the kid was already on the plane back to, wherever. So that kind of stuff has been going on for a long time. So what we need to do is take some, interestingly enough, some kind of concepts from the human intelligence operations world, which is a whole nother topic. But a simple one is code words, right? Where we have a code word or an exchange that only we know, that we've established in person. So that way, that can be given. So it's like, okay, you got my kid, you tell me the code word, and a purple elephant or whatever, and so there's that can be more obvious for, and that's easy to use with your family, establishing that. Sad that we live in a world where we have to think about these things. In a business context, depending on the connectivity and the sensitivity of what you're doing, you can make it more subtle. You can make something in conversation that is understood as a code word. I say something, you have a response to that. We know we're on the right path with it. Nobody around us would really know. Maybe we've already done it in this podcast and people but we could, that there you can take it as deep as you want. But first of all, with kids and family and stuff, you keep it simple. And then in business context, depending on the sensitivity of the business and what's at stake, you can make it a little bit more complex. And then, rotate those things every so often. But those should be established, in person, known, and not, or a very trusted call or whatever, but not sent out through email and stuff, because obviously that can be compromising. It can be used in email, right? If hey, was this request authorized? Especially one that's more subtle, this request was authorized because you come up with a reason that seems like it fits, but it's not something you would say out of that situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's I think overall, whether it's for security reasons, cybersecurity reasons, or even I'll even go to entertainment or other things, in whole, I think that the more that technology and AI and video and AI music and all these things are becoming a thing, I think in all areas, it drives the equal need for even more human, in-person. And I recently was having a conversation about this with like music and even art. I'm like, okay, AI is a great tool and it can do amazing things. But we as humans still have this like ultimate internal desire to connect with humans. We want to do business with humans. We want to go sit at a show and watch a true musician sing, not just listen to AI music, not just see AI generated, art. And even back to the security piece, it's like the more the digital is there, it's like it's driving even more that maybe the most secure way to have a password is on a physical piece of paper, because it can be
go back to that
in all areas. It's like, love technology, find ways to embrace it. And then at the same time, it's like human aspect is not going away.
I love that you said that, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot in terms of business in general. Is that I have a mentor who's described AI as the vanillification of society, because it's taking all this data and aggregating it, kind of spitting out the average. Well, as humans, to us, the average is boring, right? And so you absolutely do needs that human element and that creativity that we just don't get with AI.
Yeah.
Now I'm not against AI at all. I use
me
it all
either.
the time.
I do too.
I love the capabilities that it brings, but we also have to recognize it forces us to look at our humanity more, I think, which is a cool thing. We've got to think, well, what do we really have over machines that it doesn't have? But from a business context, I think it's really interesting because I think we are seeing a lot more shift back to that human connection, that understanding of the need for human connection. So you think, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, if you got a LinkedIn message that said something about your profile, you like, oh, wow, this person actually was like, they're contacting me because of this. Yeah. And now it's just all AI generated, Yeah. And, you get that email that's like all about your company and stuff. It's like, okay, that's on the website there. It's there, No real thought. And it's all just AI driven. So that makes human relationships and connection all that much more valuable.
Yep.
The live conferences, the in-person meetings, coffees, lunches, trade organizations coming together in small groups and stuff in their areas, all that kind of stuff, I think we're going to see an increase in that. And I think we're already seeing that in the sales world where there's that craving, that human connection, more referrals, more relationships, because people aren't trusting the web. For a long time, it's like I could go on Google and I could find the right vendor for this thing, and they've got good reviews and they've got these testimonials on their site. Nobody really cares anymore, right? But if somebody says, hey, Zach, you got to go talk to RCN. Like, these guys are awesome. Look what they did for me. Like, that's a shoe-in for, that's versus just, and I don't mean to downplay, because we still do SEO and we do all this stuff. I mean, you gotta do it all, but I'm excited about the human element part coming back up and rising back to the top like it used to be.
Same. Yeah. I'm excited about it. Well, let's wrap up, with maybe just the final piece of letting you have a chance to share. I always try to wrap up with, okay, you've done all of these things. You've had a lot of experience in, and appreciate you sharing it all, from the military aspect to the business. But what would kind of your summary advice be to pointing back to someone that maybe is earlier in their career, trying to figure out their path? What's some of your overall takeaway advice? Somebody
earlier in their career, they should really, we talked a bit about mentorship and people. I tell a lot of young people that are going in the cybersecurity world or tech or even other areas, don't be afraid to reach out to people, get on LinkedIn or wherever, or go to different events and organizations. Go meet the most successful people that you can find, that you want to model, that you really have a lot of respect for, and ask and just talk to them and say, hey, can I, would you be willing to spend 15 minutes with me? Tell them who you are. Because successful people of that caliber, they had other people help them get there. They had other people along the way, and now they're at a point where they have the opportunity to pay it forward and give back. And I wish I knew this when I was younger, but I've learned it over the years, because by happenstance, I'd run into these people like, wow, what am I doing in this room? And they've been incredibly impactful in my life. And so you don't get what you don't ask for. So go out, find these people, and just ask them for some time, and just ask to learn from them. The more you learn, reading books, learning from people, going to events, things like that. For me, at least in my journey, that's created more and more confidence. And the number one thing we could do in our business and careers is always increase our confidence. The more we have that, because that's what holds us back, right? If I'm not confident in my ability to achieve certain results, or my ability to even just to figure things out, it's going to hinder me from even taking action in the first place. If we don't take action, we don't get those results. So go out there, learn, ask. You don't get what you don't ask for. So seek help, realize like, hey, it's great. You can learn so much online and that kind of thing, but also get those connections with people, because they're also going to make other introductions that they have to happen organically. And the best business happens through people. The best jobs don't even they're not online or anything like that. They see, hey, this person's really, really motivated, up and coming, and, Steve in IT could use help from somebody like this. He's been buried. Let's hire, let's bring him in, that role wasn't posted online or whatever, but it got that person, that's up and coming to get some real world experience. So go out there, make it happen, and massive action, right? Don't just like reach out to one person and say, oh, they didn't respond.
Yep.
If they didn't, it's probably not because they don't want to or they don't like you or something. It's because they're super busy. They got a lot going on. But when so stay on top of it and, outreach in a broad way, not just, one off and hoping something comes together. So
love all that. Man, multiple pieces of that really hit for me too, though. I love the whole, like, again, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? Mm-hmm. Or I always use the Wayne Gretzky quote of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yep. It's like a lot of people ask, how did you get so-and-so on the podcast? I'm like, I just asked. Yeah. Like, oh, what? And even from the business sense, and really at any stage in business, whether you're early or you're looking for a change, or even from a sales aspect, all of those things, back to it's relationships. Mm-hmm. It's relational. It is people. Not at all in a cocky way, but I've told people that are trying to figure out their path at this point, I'm like, with what I've learned, I could never not go get any job I want. Right. Like, I've learned the recipe of, like, it's not about the college degree. Right. It's not about how good your resume is. Right. It's about all the other things that's been talked about of you build the confidence, you become proactive, you ask, you set up the meeting, mm-hmm. and when you start doing that consistently, maybe it's not the first one is a yes or the second one is a yes, but like the more that you learn those and you make those your habits and how you operate and how you show up, and you realize, like, you actually have a lot more control in the outcomes over time mm-hmm. than you might think. Definitely. It's inevitable that you'll get where you want to go if you don't quit, right? Because if you do quit, it's going to make it easier to quit the next thing. Now there are times where it makes sense to drop what you're doing and move to the next Shifts
thing, right?
But
there's a difference between that and mental quitting because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
There's logical because it makes sense to do so, and there's this is really a struggle. I'm going to quit. So no, don't quit and keep going after it. Yeah. It's inevitable. I love what you said. It's not about the degree. Now, for some things, I want you to have a degree. Like if you're doing brain surgery on open heart surgery, like I want you to have gone through med school, right? But yeah, for a lot of the things out there, it's really not for what a lot of us do. And I think the other thing too is that we talked a lot about successes today. We didn't have nearly enough time to talk about all the failures, right? We'll do a whole nother episode later that'll just be the failures. But there are no failures because that's where the lessons are learned, right? Yes. They're didn't work out the way I wanted or whatever, and go into a little bit of despair. Oh, it's such a bummer, whatever. But get going again in the right direction. New plot twist, new chapter, and hey, now we're going after, and the next one's more likely to work. So we really could have a whole nother conversation about that. That could be a good podcast series in itself, as just like the failure podcast. I don't know if it'd be that popular, but it probably would be. Yeah. Especially the people who catch on to know that that's how you learn is for failing. Just learn from it. Well, and that's actually part of why I try to at points talk through that is the goal with mentorship, with learning from other people, is learn from their mistakes, right? Because you're going to always make your own, but if you can also be a learner and learn from other people and try to avoid mistakes that they can teach you through, that again is why it's like that's the fast forward method. It is 100%. Learning from other people, and so many people are willing to share all the things they did wrong, and it's like, thank you. People want you to succeed because they want to be part of a success story, not a failure story. So and then people that are highly successful want you to succeed. I mean, it's better. We are not in a zero-sum world, right? Just because one person has more doesn't mean that we have to have less, right? that's not how
Scarcity
the economy and
mindset.
the world, right. And successful people have an abundance mindset, and they don't have the victim mentality. The world's out to get me. So they want to see those things happen. Just like, if you're on stage in front of an audience, they want a good adventure while you're up there. They want to be taken through an emotional journey and an eye-opening experience. They don't want, somebody that just like really struggling and all that kind of stuff. So they want you to succeed. So it's not And then the other thing I'd probably wrap up with is this is not like this mindset stuff is not a one-off. I read a book and I'm good. It's something you've got to do habitually. Gratitude constantly, like every morning. We do this with my kids when we're at the dinner table. We start out and we start out praying, and then after that, and as we're eating, we talk about what we're grateful for, for the day. And even though my girls are only 7 and 3, I want them to be thinking about the world through that lens, not because the world does just fine showing you all the stuff you shouldn't be grateful for. So let's spend our time focusing on what we should be grateful for.
That's great. Well, great way to wrap it up. And thank you again for coming and sharing your story. I think there was a lot of value in the conversation. So thanks for sharing. I'm looking forward to going back and re-listening to the whole thing.
Well, hey, I appreciate you. I'm grateful to be here, and I love the way you think, and just your heart for serving people is incredible, and we need more of that out there in the world. So appreciate you, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, and hopefully, I always tell people when I do a post or I do an episode, I'm like, I hope that at least one person is sparked with that. A takeaway, something that changes their direction or inspires them to maybe do something likewise. So
absolutely.
Thank you again.
Yeah. If nobody was, then just let me know and we'll come up with something else.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. And we will see you guys on the next episode.